Mojo 50 Radio. The millennial conservative resistance begins right here, right now.
Oh, yes indeed, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, children of all ages. The new millennial conservative resistance does indeed begin right here, right now with you. You were listening to, and damn, I hope you're watching the HoloNet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Today, it is the 29th of August in the year of our Lord 2020, year 4 of the Trumpian age, coming to you now from Phoenix, Arizona, here in the time of the Rona. I am your host, Matt Holloway. How the hell are you? Hope you're well. Oh, man, I am busy today. My oldest is turning 7 years old today. 7 years old. Happy birthday, little guy. Love that kid. So, yeah, while you're listening to this, I'm going to be flipping burgers and sipping beers. Yeah. As if you haven't figured it out by now, I don't record this live. I record this usually in the wee, strange, small hours of the evening before. But today, the reason why I come before you is because I always like to go first. The reason why I come before you today is to discuss, well, a problem that the mainstream media now seems to be becoming a little more aware of. What happens when, for whatever reason it may be it that mail-in ballots are just inherently less secure, be it out-and-out sabotage, whatever the reason may be, what happens if the President of the United States is not chosen in time? Yeah, what happens if we all vote on November 4th? I believe that's the election day this year, isn't it? November 4th? Let me see. I'm just going to check. Election day, 2020. November 3rd. Yeah, so if you vote November 4th, it ain't going to work. So if we all vote on November 3rd, and the President of the United States is not clearly chosen. Now, like the fridge reaction right now from everybody's like, oh, yep, Civil War. That's it. Time to go. Civil War 2. Saddle up, lock and load. Time for the big igloo. But that's not necessarily the case. There are legal precedents here in the United States for disputed presidential elections. If you don't think it can't happen, then you, like many in the mainstream media, must just have a terrible case of CRS. CRS means, can't remember. It's plain and simple. Remember 2000? You remember Bush Gore? Yeah. Bush Gore, baby! I was in high school. Actually, I was just getting ready to start high school. And the word Chad came into the lexicon. And no, I'm not talking about your classic alpha male phenotype. I'm talking about a hanging or dangling Chad. Which Chad doesn't like dangling. He likes to be up and tight. But, yeah, the hanging Chad arose out of the ridiculously antiquated and anachronistic voting process in Florida, which still involved paper punch card ballots, where during the recount, you had a dimpled Chad, you had a hanging Chad, all these crazy things trying to determine what the intent of the voter was. But this year, we may have an entirely different problem. We may have ballots that simply get lost, abandoned in the ether. We may have ballots that appear out of nowhere. We may have ballots that are never seen nor heard from again, especially when you consider that the United States Postal Services Union endorsed Joe Biden. Yeah, because that's a thing that happened. AP News reported August 14th, major U.S. Postal Workers Union endorses Joe Biden for president. And one of our colleagues here, I believe it's PC Radio, brand new show here on Mojo 50, ask the question, how in the are you going to have the election be managed essentially by the post office when the postal union endorsed Joe Biden? How's that work? What in the world is that? You're telling me the agency chiefly responsible for delivering the ballots to the voters in the first place and then making sure they get mailed, turned in, and then get counted and processed is going to be the same group that has endorsed Joe Biden. And half the country amazingly think this is okay. In what world does that make sense? Insanity. Links in the description from AP News. The major union representing U.S. postal workers has endorsed Democrat Joe Biden for president, a move that comes as President Trump has acknowledged starving the Postal Service of money in order to make it more difficult to vote by mail in November's election. The National Association of Letter Carriers, which represents 300,000 current and retired workers, said Trump has long been hostile to the post office. His administration has called for an end to collective bargaining rights, proposed service cuts, and has eyed the possibility of privatizing the functions of the agency. Now, I'm not going to do it tonight. I'm not going to do it tonight because it takes more research. But in an upcoming show, I rarely tell you what I'm going to plan for a future show, but I think between now and November, we need to have this discussion. How much do you know about the post office and how it has reached the state that it is in today? Let me know if you're interested in hearing about this because I want to do this show. I want to do something where we do kind of a deep dive into an obscure historical section and we can draw some comparisons. You know, I want to keep my powder dry on this one, but look for that in the coming weeks. I'm going to devote an entire show to the post office. I think I'm going to call it HoloNet Going Postal. And we're going to see exactly how we got to where we are today, where we have this strange, amorphous, quasi-governmental agency. It's not a government agency, but it is. It gets money from Congress, but it's not necessarily accountable to them. You have an extra layer of bureaucracy called the Board of Governors, and they're appointed politically, but they're not supposed to be appointed in such a way that makes them politically malleable. You have the Postmaster General, who's not even a general anymore. He used to be a cabinet position, but he's not now. All this changed in 1971 with Nixon, and after the postal strike of 1970, and the unions, it used to be like 4 separate unions. Then after the Postal Service Restructuring Act, they consolidated into one. There's so much to unpack. So yeah, I'm going to take either a half or a whole HoloNet, and we're going to break that down. The history of the U.S. Postal Service, where I think some mistakes were made, what I think we need to do to get it back to good, because this has to be a nonpartisan group if they're to be entrusted with our presidential elections. Because as I said, and as my colleagues over at PC Radio said, in what effing world should we entrust the election to a group that has endorsed Joe Biden? Does that make you feel good about dropping that ballot in the mailbox this November? It shouldn't. You want to get your ballot sent to your house? Good on you. Do it. It's very convenient. But you know what I think you should do? I think you should fill that puppy out. Sit around the kitchen table. Talk it up. Debate. That's what my family does. We love doing it. We do it every year. Sit around the kitchen table and debate. Then you take your ballot. You fold it up neatly. Real nice and neat. You slide it gingerly, softly, sensuously into your little envelope. You sign that bad boy. Put your phone number on it so if they want to challenge it, they can. And then you put your in your car, or you walk your to the nearest polling location and turn it in person. That's what you do. Yep. Okay. All right. Now, got off on a tangent there. Kind of teasing a later show. I know I'm usually not a dreadful tease like that. But I just wanted to kind of give you guys an idea where my head's at. And I got some good feedback about how the show is. I've changed my lighting. I've changed my camera scheme a little bit to give you a little bit better view of all this happening, so you're not like inside my face while I'm doing the show. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Before we dive in on what precisely happens when there's a hiccup in choosing the president, first I want to talk to you about our fantastic advertisers. Educate yourself on green energy. Go over to patriotenergyaz.org/mojo50. patriotenergyaz.org/mojo50. Talk to our friends at Patriot Energy. Drop them a line. They've got your six. This is a veteran-owned and operated company. President Jarrett Soria over there is leading a team of patriots. Young patriots, too, for the most part. Quentin, Austin, Sang, Emma, Angel, Tyler. It's growing, too. Joshua, Ethan, Jessica. They just welcomed on a brand new team in Texas. If you check out their Facebook, it's insane. They serve now like 2/3 of the country. It's like an L-shaped kind of thing going. I'll have to pull it up on their Facebook page and show you later on. But odds are, they can help you out. So do it today. Go on patriotenergyaz.org/mojo50. Give them your information. They'll give you a call. These guys are all about doing solar the right way. Do it the right way. Honesty, integrity, clarity. Solar done right means you save 30 to 40% on your electric costs, and you own the system, and it's $0 down, just like it should be. Don't waste another minute. Call them. Get on the website. Tell them Matt sent you from Mojo50. All right, Patriot Energy. So now, let's break it down. Let's draw our hypothetical scenario, if you will. It's November 4th. You're haggard. You're tired. You're probably drinking some APR coffee because it's the official coffee of Mojo50. Ooh, you see how I slid that in there? Nice. Drinking it from your HoloNet mug that you purchased from the HoloNet store. And the news comes on. The results aren't in yet. It's been a difficult night. You've been up all night, chanting and screaming at the television, biting your nails, gnashing of teeth. All across the country, the commies go, "Ree!" They wear their hats and chant, "Not my president." Very reminiscent of 2016. But at the end of it all, the results are inconclusive. So where do we go from there? What happens next? What happens next is called a constitutional crisis. That's the word for it. Foreign Policy put out an article by Brian Kalt. This is August 25th, so just a couple days ago. He said, the law is clear. Okay? So here's what happens. The president and vice president's terms end at noon on January 20th, whether the next successor has been picked or not. And the line of succession statute, which I have right over here, by the way, which is 3 U.S. 19, dictates, quite clearly in fact, that the Speaker of the House of Representatives is first in line for the presidency, followed by the President pro tempore of the Senate. Now here's the rub. You ready? You tight? There's a problem. The law then is clear about how to handle a failure to decide the election in time, but applying the law is another matter. We could have a small succession issue. The problem is that it relies on Congress for the line of succession. Speaker of the House currently is Nancy Pelosi of California. This year, of course, all 435 seats of the House are up for election, and all of those terms expire January 3rd. You catch that? The president and vice president's terms end at noon on January 20th. So, if the presidential election is undecided due to issues with the mail-in ballots, what's to say that the House elections won't be similarly plagued with delays? Their terms expire on the 3rd. So if the presidential election is delayed and unresolved because of disputes over the validity and timing of mail-in ballots, he writes, many individual House elections decided by those same ballots would probably be delayed and unresolved too. The result would be fierce fighting over huge swaths of the House's membership. Majority control could change chaotically from day to day as a partially filled House wrestled over each new batch of individual election results amid a fog of state recounts and litigation. With at least 218 seats filled, there would not even be a quorum, meaning there would be no Speaker of the House. What a nightmare! The backup to that is in the Senate. The terms of only about a third of the senators will expire on January 3rd. The other two-thirds of the Senate will be able to form a quorum and choose a president pro tempore. But just like the House, delayed election results could lead to intense political combat over the 30-odd seats up for grabs. With majorities shifting daily, complicating matters, governors in some states might try to appoint people to fill vacant seats temporarily, assuming it's clear after the election even who the governors are. As such, the president pro tempore could be chosen by a majority of questionable legitimacy, formed through a combination of confusion, litigation, and partisan shenanigans. Inauguration Day succession doesn't have to be this disorderly. Indeed, the Constitution suggests that it isn't even supposed to be. Section 3 of the 20th Amendment, ratified in 1933, addressed the problem of unresolved elections. Before the 20th Amendment, there simply would be no president in such a situation. A fate that was avoided very narrowly in 1877 when the presidential election disaster was settled just 2 days before the start of the new term. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into that one because that one was crazy. This has happened a couple of times. Excuse me. The 20th Amendment authorizes Congress to pass a law to fill the gap so that someone can act as president until an elected president can be chosen. For midterm crises, when something happens to both an elected president and vice president, Congress had already been authorized by Article 2 of the Constitution to predefine a line of succession, listing what officer shall then act as president. But the 20th Amendment gives Congress an additional option for Inauguration Day succession, predefining a process instead of a list. In other words, Inauguration Day succession can be figured out more flexibly and on the spot. Moreover, the 20th Amendment opens Inauguration Day succession to any person, not just limited to the class of officers. So, Congress has never really taken a look at its broad 20th Amendment powers. For 14 years, Congress took no action at all on it until 1947. It just lumped the Inauguration Day succession and midterm succession into the same system. Speaker, Pres pro tempore, then members of the cabinet, instead of defining a separate process for the Inauguration Day succession. In a one-size-fits-all approach that's still in the law today, he writes. So there are good reasons the 20th Amendment allowed for Inauguration Day succession distinct from a midterm situation. One is continuity of government. But if something happens to both the president and vice president, it will be well settled and obvious who the speaker is if it was in the middle of a term. But noted earlier, on Inauguration Day, if there's no new president and a vice president, because the elections are in chaos, the selection of the speaker and the president pro tempore will likely be in chaos as well. It's like having a building that's on fire and handing over the decision of who's in charge to the people in the next building, which is also on fire. So, who the hell winds up in charge? Oh my God. That's where we're at. So, hypothetically, let's say the president pro tempore of the Senate, the Republicans managed to keep control of the Senate. The president pro tempore is Senator Chuck Grassley. What the hell do we know about Senator Chuck Grassley? Senator Chuck Grassley. Have you heard of this guy at all? Okay, Iowa, Republican. He's been a senator since 81. He's been a senator longer than I've been alive. Jesus. So, he's 86. Holy. He's 86. How old's Pelosi? I'm just curious. Nancy Pelosi. How old is she? She's 80. Pfft. So, it'll be dueling octogenarians for who's in charge of the American government. Unless it is a clear and concise victory, which using the postal system is about as likely as me having a full-grown angel fly out of my... It's just not likely to happen, guys. Which is why we're suddenly seeing it cropping up in a lot of mainstream stories. We just showed you foreign... oh, jeez. Why come I can't... Foreign Review, was that? Why can't I remember the name of it? Pull it back up. Foreign Policy. Foreignpolicy.com chose to tackle this topic. Why I'm looking at it now. Because sure, when I was growing up, we all thought we were going to perish in nuclear hellfire. And how many science fiction and, action shows talked about the succession to the presidency. Sum of All Fears, for example. You have your what do they call it? There was a whole show about it. Come on, Matt. Designated Survivor. You have your designated survivor for like the State of the Unions. But this is an interesting situation. What do you do when all of these seats are in question? Who becomes the president of the United States? Now, this has led to a concern by many that the military could become involved. We'll talk about that when we come back from this short little break, because for the first time in my lifetime, and I think in many of yours, this became a real question. Would the military have to intervene in a United States election? That's insane. People were asking that question, such to the point that a leading general had to testify to Congress to the military's political neutrality. This isn't a banana republic. This isn't some tin pot dictatorship. This is the United States of America. But when you break the system by using COVID-19 as an excuse to subvert our voting rights, that's what you get. All right, that music means we got to go take a little break. But when we return, we're going to that story about the military defining their neutrality. You're listening to the Holonet on the mighty, the powerful Mojo 50 Radio. Stick around.
to the Holonet on Mojo 50 Radio. The Millennial Conservative Resistance begins right here, right now.
And we're back. You're listening to Holonet on the mighty powerful Mojo 50 Radio. And we go to the story from thedailymail.com. Now, I always like to look at the British Post and, the British news stories, and also some of the German stories, like from Die Welt, just to really see what the rest of the world thinks of us. And here is what they're saying in the UK. TheDailyMail.com reports, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff says the military will not intervene in the election or resolve a disputed vote after Biden claimed Trump would have to be dragged from the White House if he refuses to accept defeat. The bullet points here are that General Mark Milley, head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told Congress on Friday the military will not get involved in the election process or be willing to resolve a disputed vote. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs said he believes deeply in the principle of an apolitical U.S. military. This comes amid fears that President Trump might refuse to accept defeat if he loses in November. The president has repeatedly claimed, according to the Mail, quote-unquote, without evidence, that mail-in ballots will result in an inaccurate and fraudulent election. In June, Milley apologized for walking with the president through Lafayette Square in what turned out to be a photo op during the George Floyd. That doesn't really bear either way. So, the comments from General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, are that he will not intervene and that the military will not intervene. Some have speculated the military might be called upon to get involved, either by Trump trying to use it to help its re-election prospects, or as Democratic challenger Joe Biden suggested, to remove Trump from the White House if he refuses to accept defeat. The military has adamantly sought to tamp down speculation and is zealously protective of its historically nonpartisan nature. He said, I quote, I believe deeply in the principle of an apolitical U.S. military. In the event of a dispute over some aspect of the elections, by law, U.S. courts and the U.S. Congress are required to resolve any disputes, not the U.S. military. I foresee no role for the U.S. Armed Forces in this process. So, the general alludes to a solution that was not at all discussed in the foreign policy article. Did you catch that? The courts. And that should ring especially true when we talk about the history of disputed elections, because what was the most recent disputed election? We talked about it first. Yeah, Florida. 2000. When the Supreme Court stepped in to help decide the race between George W. Bush and Al Gore. While Gore infamously won the popular vote, the contest came down to an electoral college battle in Florida. Florida officials were in the process of recounting ballots when the court effectively awarded Florida's 25 electoral votes to Bush. So, what happened here, the Gore campaign sued to allow Florida to continue recounting. The Supreme Court felt that the recounts already done were sufficient and awarded the state to President Bush. Tom's your Uncle Jane's your aunt. 9/11 happens a couple months later. And history moves on. But this was left out, very curiously, from the foreignpolicy.com story. The role that the Supreme Court has to play to adjudicate disputes between the other two branches of the government. So, as is the case in our hypothetical, where all 435 seats of the House are up for grabs, so there is no clear-cut Speaker of the House, there potentially is no clear-cut majority in the Senate, therefore no clear-cut President pro tempore. The obvious path would be for the Supreme Court to adjudicate the elections of the House or the Senate in order to provide for a succession. Very likely, the Supreme Court would intervene in the Senate, being far fewer in number, only 33 seats up, as opposed to 435 in question. It would be easier for them to parse through the election results and come to the appropriate decisions, or to force a compromise between the House, the Senate, the Democrats, and the Republicans. The Supreme Court here is the dark horse. The Supreme Court is the one you can't predict. And though the Supreme Court has had 2 justices added during the term of President Trump, and I feel so lousy about this, I'm having a hard time. It's Justices of the Supreme Court of the United States. Here we go. Roberts, Thomas, Ginsburg, Breyer, Alito, Sotomayor, Kagan, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. Come on, Kavanaugh, Matt? You couldn't remember the name Kavanaugh? Anyway, even though President Trump added Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to rule his way. As they've shown, they're quite independent of the political whims of the Republican Party. So yes, this is why it has been so crucial for President Trump's judicial appointments to get through. Because at the end of the day, if Congress can't answer the question of who is the elected president of the United States or the acting president of the United States, it's going to fall to the Supreme Court. And as I said, I'm fairly certain that in this hypothetical scenario, it does wind up being Chuck Grassley, President pro tempore of the Senate, assuming the news of it doesn't out and out 86 the poor guy, because he's literally 86 years old. Oh, hang on, I gotta use the... that was a pretty good dad joke. Anyway, so yes, Senator Chuck Grassley becomes acting president of the United States, or interim president of the United States, while the election is being parsed out, amidst a storm of litigation and lawsuits between the states, between Congress. This thing could stretch clear into March, possibly to the summer. And I think that is the most dangerous scenario, where we have President Trump and Joe Biden battling it out. One can only hope that in the interests of the unity of the country, that the loser would step away gracefully and not drag this out needlessly. But if the past couple of months have been any indication, I don't see that as a likely scenario. I think this is going to be protracted and brutal. So, on that note, go to preparewithmojo50.com. Preparewithmojo50.com. Your survival is our only mission. Preparation, not panic. Pick up your 4-week emergency food supply. It's $197. It's $100 off. Gives you 2,000 calories a day, 284 servings. Breakfast, lunches, dinners, and drinks. Free shipping and handling. Limit 3 per household. Or you can just get the 1-week emergency food supply. Comes in this really cool ammo box. $74. So, breakfast, lunch, dinner, 42 servings. Meals in resealable, heavy-duty 4-layer pouches. 7 varieties of food. 25-year shelf life. Sturdy locking ammo can with a gasket seal. Limit 5. My Patriot Supply, our partners on this, go to preparewithmojo50.com, preparewithmojo50.com. The most responsible thing you can do with your Trump bucks. Okay. So I mentioned we were going to run down the disputed elections that we've had in the past. Now, here is a very, very interesting one. 1800. Only our fourth presidential election. The House of Representatives had to decide who the vice president would be after Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr tied at 73 electoral ballots each. At the time, Electoral College delegates voted for two candidates, and the top finisher became the president, and the runner-up became vice president before this was changed by the 12th Amendment in 1804. That required the electors to vote specifically for a president and vice president. So 24 years later, the House again had to determine official results, but this time for the presidential election, not the vice presidential. While Andrew Jackson won more electoral votes, he didn't receive a majority, which prompted Congress to choose between him and John Quincy Adams. What happened next was what Jackson supporters deemed a corrupt bargain. Then Speaker Henry Clay forged a coalition that secured the White House for Adams, and he became Adams's Secretary of State. In 1876, Republican Rutherford B. Hayes lost the popular vote to Democrat Samuel Tilden, but 3 states had disputed results, which caused the two parties to make a deal. Democrats gave Hayes the presidency in exchange for Republicans removing all federal troops from the South, ending the Reconstruction. There have been multiple instances of alleged voter fraud in presidential elections, but they didn't result in formal action. The extremely close contest between Nixon and Kennedy in 1960 is a recent example. Republican officials cried foul, stated the voting machines were rigged, but Nixon never contested the results. So this is not our first rodeo. But this is definitely the first instance where, as earlier stated, the outcome of a presidential election could very well depend on our postal service, of whom the union has again declared their support for Joe Biden. They have not come across as an impartial actor. So how much will Republicans and conservatives trust this election? And if President Trump is reelected in a landslide due to the rising riots, the increasing violence like we saw in Kenosha, Wisconsin, the defund the police protests continuing, and cities like Portland and Seattle actually voting to do so, leading to increased crime, increased civil unrest. There was an incident, I believe, this past week where a Papa John's franchise had the windows smashed in, and the man looked out and hollered at the protesters and said, "Are you trying to re-elect Trump?" Because historically speaking, in times of unrest, the American people turn to conservatives. They turn to Republicans because we're the law and order party. They turn to strong government and respond very well to promises to restore order. And that is what President Trump is doing. And if you listen to his speech the other night, it was all about restoring law and order. So as long as these riots and demonstrations persist and grow ever more violent, this will galvanize people on the right and will take people on the left and shoehorn them in. This could very well catapult President Trump back into office for his second term. Now, I love that. I don't love the idea of more violence. And what's more, when we are already experiencing massive violence and unrest, what does a disputed election do to that smoldering fire? It throws gasoline upon it. Prepare with Mojo50.com, and I strongly recommend that you make yourself prepared for the worst. Stock up on your freedom seeds, on your two-way accoutrement. Got to be careful how I say that, otherwise Facebook put the kibosh on this fast, quick, and in a hurry. Be ready to defend yourself, your home, your business, your family. Be ready, because we may reach a situation where you pick up the phone to dial 911 and nobody's coming. Nobody's coming. We may reach a situation where you can't get to a store to buy food. Make your family ready. I pray that I am looking at this so negatively that, and nothing I'm saying is even close to coming true. I am praying that that's the case, and that this sudden slew of articles, all these articles, by the way, about disputed elections and about, generals saying they're not going to intervene. This is the last 4 days. Okay? I didn't have to reach back far in the Wayback Machine to grab these, okay? I mean, this foreign policy, that's from the 25th. Let's see here. This one from The Guardian. That's the 23rd. One from the AP, that's like a week and a half old. This one from the Daily Mail, that's like 8 hours old. This is what people are talking about. People are getting seriously concerned about this. About a disputed election in 2020. That we wake up on November 4th and we don't know who the president is. That's a terrifying prospect. But at the end of the day, this is still the United States of America, and the rule of law still reigns supreme. We are a nation of laws, not a nation of emotional tumult. It's one of the things I've been saying about this Kyle Rittenhouse story as developing in Kenosha. The lawyer, by the way, just apparently they got the same lawyer as the Sandman case, which is good news, I suppose, because I really believe they're going to get a good defense now, and I think they're going to get to the bottom of this. The truth will out. The truth will out. We just have to remain steadfast, and we need to be a force for good. Work every day to keep the peace. I had some video here from Arizona State Representative, actually, Senator-elect, who was down at the protests in Gilbert. And people stand on either side of the street from each other. F you, F this, F that, Trump 4 more years, F Trump, F the cops. Kelly Townsend, sorry, I couldn't think of her name for some reason. I could pull up her video on here and I can show it to you, but, there's some harsh language. And I think I might just repost it on the HoloNet Facebook. You can check it out there, facebook.com/HoloNet. But the difference between a protest in Arizona and then you look at a protest in Wisconsin, and then you look at a protest in D.C. In D.C., it's a little more muted. You got a dude picking up a bike and shoving it into a cop and into Rand Paul and, going after them and attacking them, surrounding them, chanting them. And it's nasty. It's getting a little terse. It's getting semi-violent there. You got people frothing at the mouth and cussing at you. Then you go into Wisconsin. Then you go into Minneapolis, Minnesota. Then you go into Indianapolis and in Austin. And you have all of this insanity about. You have just massive property damage in the millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. You have loss of life, people getting shot at, people getting beaten. There's a difference. And the difference is here in Arizona, you don't know who has a gun and who doesn't. An armed society is a very polite society. And I also think a piece of it is that our law enforcement here in the state don't truck with that crap. Even in the most liberal parts of Arizona, you still have the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department, the Pinal County Sheriff's Department to deal with. And you also have the Arizona DPS, Department of Public Safety, and they do not F around. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, President Trump just had a rally here, and they were protesting in the streets of Phoenix, and people were coming down the road chanting, "We're going to block the 10! We're going to block the 10!" Cops blocked them off. "No, we're not. No, we're not." And turned around and walked the other way. You know, they didn't actually chant that, but that was the story that I put out there on Facebook, because you could see the look on their faces like, oh, that's a wall of cops. We're going to go this way now. And they turned around and decided not to. I think this is right after the one dude took a pepper ball to the gift bag. Bullseye. Memories. When we could laugh about things like that. But yeah, that's the difference. We need to get to there where, you know, the right to disagree, the right to have a differing opinion is respected. You don't have to agree. You just have to acknowledge someone else's right to have a different opinion from your own. But we've gotten so far away from that, and that's why we're having discussions now, and we're asking questions now that we've never asked in my life, that we never asked in your life or in your parents' lives. What if an American election, honest to God, goes up and turns violent? That hasn't been a question in over a century. Think on that. Think about that. Noodle that out a little bit. That hasn't been a question in 160 years. What if an election in this country goes up and people turn violent? People are honestly asking the question if military intervention is necessary. How stunning is that? We're having conversations now we never thought we'd have to have. And no, this is not laid at the feet of President Trump. It's laid at the feet of the American people. Where we've become so polarized against one another, and it is the forces on the extreme left that are forcing this confrontation. Where do you hear the nebulous forces on the far right, these fictitious white supremacists that are apparently working everything from behind the scenes, and they're the great boogeyman according to the mainstream media? Where the hell are they? Where? I was talking to a friend of mine at work. Institutional racism? I disagree that there is institutional racism in this country. Jim Crow laws have been wiped out. Discriminatory laws have been wiped out. There's not institutional racism. There's some systemic racism, and there is a difference. Systemic racism is because the system itself has been infiltrated and corrupted by bigoted men and women. And not just bigoted men and women when it comes to skin color, but no, when it comes to religion, when it comes to political affiliation too. People have bigotry in them. There's the Avenue Q song. It's funny to us because it's a little bit true. They sing, everybody's racist. It's a little bit true. It stings a bit, doesn't it? Because everybody's a little bit racist. Everybody. You've had a moment. Don't lie to me. Don't get off your soapbox. Get down from your ivory tower and stand on the dirt with the rest of us, you bastard. You know it. But America is not a racist nation. We do not have institutionalized racism. There is no apartheid in the United States. There's no Jim Crow. There's no discriminatory law. If anything, the only discriminatory law is affirmative action. Because that actually disadvantages a certain group of people based on the color of their skin, and it's not the one you think. So yes, there is systemic racism where the system has been infiltrated, corrupted, and infected, if you will, by bigots. Yes, there are bigoted cops. There are also bigoted school teachers, bigoted principals, bigoted lawyers, bigoted doctors, because there's bigots in all walks of life. And any time that someone in a position of authority is a bigot, that means there is some level of systemic racism in that system because they have influence over that system. That damn simple. It's called a nuanced argument, kids. It does not mean America is a racist nation. Sorry, Ayanna Pressley. Sorry, the crew or the clique or the gang or whatever you're calling yourselves now. This is not a racist nation. It has not been for a very long time. And yes, we paid a hefty price. Over 600,000 dead and buried. Over the course of 4 years. We bled the ground red. We bathed this nation in our blood to make it clean again. To borrow from my own Christian faith an allusion there. The Civil War was all the reparation necessary. We paid for our sin with our dearest blood. I know I covered a lot of ground there in like 10 minutes, didn't I? One thing leads to another. But I just want to remind you all out there in Mojo 50 land that America is great because America is good. At our hearts, we are good. Our systems can be affected and infected by people with evil in their hearts, just like any other system around the world. Because we're human. Can't get around that. But we can always strive to be better. And that's why it is my sincere hope that the dark visions that have been set out by the media of what could happen to our country in the event of a disputed presidential election, I hope it is the absolute height of hyperbole. I hope that we're looking back on this, shaking our heads, laughing, quite the same as we did with Y2K. That we thought it could come to such things. And how simple it was. That Congress stepped up and did their job. That the Supreme Court stepped up and did their job. That the American people remained calm, cool, and collected. I pray for that. But meanwhile, I tell you, tonight I will be praying for Texas and Louisiana. If you haven't had a chance, get on Trek Federation. Link will be in the description. You can donate there or donate at Mercury One if you have the chance. From Phoenix, good night. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. I'm Matt Holloway. End transmission.